10 and 10?
I'm going to do 10 and 10.
10 and 10.
You want morning at 5 minutes?
I don't need it.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So
So basically, this thing's going to be green. When it goes to yellow, you've got 5 minutes left, and then when it goes to red, you're done.
Okay. All right, supply chain. So what we're doing today is we're learning about hospital supply chain.
You have to stand up.
Oh, you have to stand up?
yes.
Okay,
Where's the
I'm gonna do
video
this.
cam? Over there. It's
Your
over
camera's
there.
back there.
Over there.
So go to the front of the room.
That way you're in the phone.
Okay.
And the purpose is present to your client your expertise in this topical area.
Okay, hospital supply chain. What we're going to do today is understand core concepts, definitions, terminology, big and medium questions, and then some other little goodies I put in there as well, and how they apply architecturally to what we do in our job. So supply chain, a really basic and generic definition of this is a supply chain is a system of organizations, people, technology, activities, information, and resources involved in moving a product or service from a supplier to a customer. That's just a really general concept of what supply chain is, but how we apply it to hospitals and healthcare is really a hospital's focus is truly just patient care. And so we need to, as architects, enable them to focus, to maintain that focus by doing a couple things. So one of the things is ensuring product availability. So everything in its right place at the right time. So caregivers can access goods or services in a timely fashion, and they don't have to hunt down things on unit. Also, minimizing storage space to allow maximum patient care space. Reducing material handling time by caregivers to allow maximum time with the patient. And then also, at the end of the day, hospitals want to make money. So we want to minimize inventory of goods at hand to maximize their dollars. And something that I always tell clients when facilitating process improvement with them during pre-design is that for all of the support services programs and departments, I tell them that we want to get their flow to a point that the patient does not see them. They need to be invisible because if they're not, then we're doing something wrong. And there's a problem with their flow. So patients don't want to sit and wait for a supply or a med because they'll know that there's something wrong with the flow in itself. So again, supply chain methodology, you want to lower operating costs while improving services. And our role in healthcare supply chain is to maximize efficiencies, so in our floor plans, as well as minimizing the spatial footprint. So we really want to get our support spaces as minimal as possible. And then I saw some slides for, I think this is for Novant, while I was gone the past couple of months. And this stuff was really good, so I wanted to include it as well. So supply chain needs for our clients, we want to increase inventory turns, decrease supply costs, centralize supply chain, standard replenishment system, easy supply stocking, standard par levels, inventory tracking abilities, no expired items in patient care areas, dependable delivery schedules, and reducing storage space. A lot of this stuff is really just applicable to materials management and supplies. Also meds and some other more perishable items. And that's kind of where supply chain focuses. But I think from our perspective too, we focus supply chain on most of the support services flows and their process. So again, supply chain is moving a good or a service from a supplier to a customer. So the suppliers really in hospital supply chain or healthcare supply chain are those support services departments, which include materials management, linen, food, biomed facilities, EVS, meds through pharmacy, lab, mail, loading dock is more of a space in itself, it's not really a process. Patient transport's big, IT, respiratory therapy, you can lump in that, and then also central sterile for surgery. And then the customers at the end of the day are any and all patient care spaces. So the services provided, again, materials, supplies, food, linen, waste, kind of all of those services provided by support services. And so I found this diagram, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And so I tweaked it a little bit. So your typical hospital supply chain, what we walk into and what we typically see is manufacturers send their goods to a distributor, and the distributors send those goods then to a hospital. In older clients or clients that we are trying to lean out, we see their on-site hospital storeroom. And it's usually really big, and they maintain a lot of par levels, and they have a ton of inventory and stock in the hospital. And then they distribute those supplies into the patient care unit where you see a typical supply room. And then they redistribute those items to the room themselves. But what we want to do, ideally, and I think what we do with our clients, is we minimize a lot of this. And we streamline it a little bit better. So your hospital storeroom is a minimal footprint. A lot of times we see clients have off-site warehouse distribution centers. And then instead of distributing those supplies from that smaller storeroom to some sort of decentralized stockroom or supply space on the unit, we're supplying it and distributing it right to the patient bedroom or to the patient care space, which is like a nurse server. Supply chain techniques. This gets in a little bit deep, I think, in supply chain, but for those of us that work with the support services departments, we kind of need to know this lingo so we can help them figure out how to best handle their process. So stockless inventory, it's where materials are delivered directly to the patient care areas and bypassing that standard storing space. Bulk inventory is held and stored by the distributor or by the healthcare organization at an on-site location, not within the hospital. So again, this minimizes hospital storeroom space. Vendor managed inventory is when a distributor hires their own employees to come in and work out their own supply chain process within the hospital. So it's not hospital staff, it's this distributor staff. So it kind of helps if you're bringing in these specific professionals and they help streamline the process within the facility. And then automated point of view systems, APUs, it's Omnicells and Pyxis type of units. It's where it's these kind of pieces of equipment allow meds and supplies to be directly accessed by the caregiver, and in the same time you're allowing charge capture information in real time and then inventory information. So the materials management and the purchasing department know exactly how much stock is available on the unit at any given time, and then they can charge each patient for each piece of or good provided instead of just charging an overall cost for the patient for a room fee, and I think that makes them more money. Current trends again, increased savings, decreased space, and decreased waste. So some other kind of key terms are just-in-time delivery. So we need more frequent delivery of goods, which helps minimize hospital storage space. Sometimes we talk about with clients whether or not it's feasible to locate some of their support services off-site. So whether that's food service, materials management, lab, and pharmacy have been discussed in the past as well. Supplies and meds deployed to the bedside, again through nurse servers, and asset tracking technologies. So that is included with the APUs. We talked about the Omnicells and the Pyxis pieces, RFID tracking, and barcode scanning. And again, that allows real-time information for the hospital to charge per supplier good use of information. Just-in-time inventory management, again, this is a slide from Novon. It kind of just shows you graphically that you're delivering, the typical model is delivery on a once or twice a weekly basis. These days we recommend to our clients to go, if we can, just-in-time, which is 7 days a week. A lot of times it's not feasible because we're working with smaller regional hospitals that are far away from where the distributors are located. So sometimes it's feasible to get 5 times weekly delivery, or if they're delivering to themselves from some sort of offsite facility, again, 7 days a week is ideal. So you're minimizing your footprint within the hospital for these supply spaces. This is an example of Omnicells and Pyxis. I think everybody knows what those are. So big and medium questions. Again, on-site versus off-site or outsourcing. Do you allow food service to be managed by some sort of other company? Or same materials, pharmacy lab? Level of decentralization of supplies and meds, how far do you want to take it? Is it to the bedside? Are there some sort of decentralized overall storerooms on the patient care unit? How does the client want to deal with those? And then just-in-time delivery, if it's possible, how far to take it? I have like 1 or 2 more minutes.
Well, you can go, we have another 10 minutes discussion.
Okay. Here's an example of materials management and purchasing department from Jeff City. So what they ended up doing, they did just-in-time as far as they could take it. I think we got to like four times a week delivery for different kinds of supplies. And we minimized their current warehouse, which was off-site. We brought it into the hospital, which wasn't ideal. It's what they wanted, but we were able to really make it as small of a footprint as possible. It was a 3,000 net square foot storeroom space. So that's one example of an on-site space, but kind of on the opposite spectrum of that, Virtua, who, since they're such a large healthcare organization and they are catering to so many different facilities, they're able to have their own off-site warehouse and distribution center. So the virtual hospital, it was a really, really minimal on-site storeroom, which they were bringing stuff in just in time, and then they could pull from right away. So that footprint ended up being 440 square feet. So you can see the difference in hospital footprint and how you're able to minimize and decrease square footage in the hospital by doing some sort of
For a hospital, it's twice the size.
Exactly. So it's pretty amazing what we're put in.
If you did go graphic. Yeah.
Yeah. This is just an example from the latest that for material supply and distribution of future state flow. It's from Jeff City. It's really hard to read, but it's a lot of these trends and techniques were employed. It was more of bringing in more frequent deliveries, supplies at the bedside from your servers, and all of the like Starburst are where all of the kind of supply chain trends came into effect, and they wanted to employ the future state to minimize waste and square footage. And then this is an interesting thing that we worked on, Mark and I, a year or two ago with Owensboro. They were going back and forth with on-site laundry processing or off-site, and at the end of the day, they decided to keep their laundry processing facility in their existing hospital. So it was off-site from the new hospital, so we had to create a flow for them to help them envision and work out how they were going to process and how often they were going to deliver to themselves, and then ultimately get to the square footage that we needed in the new hospital for holding. I'm not going to go through it. You guys can look at it later. But what we figured out was 2 days worth of clean linen in the new hospital at all times, and 1 day's worth of clean linen stocked on the units at all time, and then they would kind of resupply to themselves from various spaces throughout the hospital and at the loading dock. And we ended up getting to a total of 1,600 square feet dedicated to linen at the new facility, as opposed to, I don't know what the old number was, but it was
close to
much
10,000.
bigger. Yes, because of the processing facility. And then this was just a diagram we came up with to help them envision how their restocking would be at their main linen holding space by the dock. And then these are some of the references from the NOVA presentation that I just threw in there.